Hey, thank you for clicking on this video. I want to do a quick review of the Sovol Zero 3D printer. I'm going to talk about some of the features of this printer, some of the pros and the cons, and then ultimately if I think you should go out and buy one of these printers for yourself. So let's get into it. First and foremost, this printer might look a little familiar to you, and that's because it is a bit familiar. It is based off of the Voron Zero, the smallest printer of the Voron project. But unlike the Voron Zero, this is designed for mass manufacturing in mind. The front and the top are made out of glass, the sides are made out of sheet metal, and the plastic parts are all injection molded ABS. This printer is Core XY, meaning there are two stepper motors that work together to drive the X and the Y axes. The Z motion is driven by two lead screws on opposite sides of the bed, linked together by a single stepper motor. Speaking of the bed, the build volume is 152.4 millimeters cubed, so it is rather small, but it is a bit bigger than the Voron Zero. The motion of this printer is all done by linear rail, so you got linear rails on the X, Y, and Z axes, making this a very stable and robust printer. Looking at the tool head, on the front you have your part cooling fan, and on the side you have your fan for your hot end. The tool head of this printer also has a built-in accelerometer, meaning this printer is capable of input shaping calibration right out of the box. Underneath the tool head, you have an eddy probe sensor. This sensor is used for both homing the Z-axis and for bed leveling. Speaking of bed leveling, on the front left corner of this bed is a load cell. So before your print starts, the tool head will touch this corner of the bed, take some data, and then it'll know exactly how far the nozzle needs to be from the bed for your perfect first layer. And this thing does do pretty perfect first layers. Looking towards the back of the printer, you can see an auxiliary fan. This is used for additional part cooling, which allows it to print so incredibly fast. Down and to the right, we have an exhaust fan with a removable cover. Without the cover, the fan simply exhausts all the air from inside the chamber outside. But once you install the cover, it reroutes the air through a charcoal filter, helping to minimize any off-gassing from printing engineering-grade materials like ABS or nylon. Turning to the right side of this printer, you'll see the spool holder. Now, if you've seen any other reviews on YouTube on this printer, you might know that it used to be located on the back of the printer. A lot of people disliked it in that location, and so will listen, so mine came equipped with it to mount directly to the side. In addition to the spool holder, you have your Wi-Fi antenna, and then down below you have all your ports. You have HDMI, USB, and Ethernet. And finally on the right side, you have your filament runout sensor. Looking to the left side of this printer, all you have is your power switch and your power input. The top glass panel can be easily removed by simply unlocking each of the corners of the printer and then lifting the panel out of place. This printer comes with a small basic screen on the front. It's not going to blow anyone away, but it's functional and it does its job. On the bottom of the printer, you'll see these rubber feet. These help to keep the printer stable while it's printing at super high speeds. Setting up this printer is relatively straightforward. It comes with a USB stick that has all the information that you need. Before you boot up your printer for the first time, put the USB stick into your computer and enter your Wi-Fi credentials into the text file that's in the root directory. On this USB drive is also your OrcaSlicer profile. You'll need to upload this manually to OrcaSlicer, as OrcaSlicer doesn't have the Sovol Zero as part of its default array of 3D printers. That might have changed by now, but that's how it was when I first set up my printer. Once you have all that done, you're pretty much good to go. This printer is essentially plug and play. Now before we get to any of the pros and cons of this printer, let's see some prints. This printer is great at printing a lot of different materials, including TPU, PETG, and of course, PLA. The print quality so far in this printer has been pretty excellent. There has been a little bit of stringing here and there, but that's something you can probably tune out in your OrcaSlicer settings. Now let's talk about some pros of this printer. The first thing that pops out to me is the build quality. Between the glass, the sheet metal, and the injection molded parts, and of course the linear rails, this thing is built like a tank. Another pro for this printer, at least in my opinion, is the size. While it's not the biggest printer in the world, it prints the majority of the things that I need it to print. And even though it's such a small printer, it is seriously decked out with all the bells and whistles that I would ever need. Finally, I love that this printer is open source. I'm used to Clipper on all my other printers, so having it on this printer is really nice. Sovol also released the full CAD of this printer, so if you ever need to reference it for repairs, you have that available. Now let's talk about some of the cons of this printer. While the build materials are really nice, they are also rather heavy. So if you have back problems, I wouldn't recommend just lugging this everywhere you want to go. The second thing that comes to mind is the noise level of this printer. With the auxiliary fan, the part cooling fan, and the exhaust fan all running at the same time, this thing sounds like a mini jet engine. So if you live in a dorm room or in an apartment with really thin walls, I would keep that into careful consideration. The last thing I want to mention is the price of this printer. Right now, it is on sale at the Sovol website for $3.99. It's usually priced at $4.99. Even at $3.99, this printer isn't the best deal, especially when you consider that the A1, the A1 Mini, and the Elegoo Centauri Carbon all exist on the market at a cheaper price. So, do I think you should buy this 3D printer? Well, it depends. If this is your first 3D printer, I would personally look elsewhere. Printers like the A1 and A1 Mini are cheaper than the Sovol Zero, have a larger build volume, can print basically the same speed, and are super easy to use, so they're great for beginners. But if you're a 3D printing enthusiast and you're looking for another printer to add to your collection, I would recommend this printer. It really is a do-it-all 3D printer. You can throw basically any material at it and it'll print it just fine. Even though the chamber doesn't have any active heating, because the chamber is so small, the bed can keep the temperature at high enough levels for printing things like ABS. It has been incredibly reliable, has amazing first layers, plus it just looks super cool. Alright, that does it for me. Thank you so much for watching, but before we go, I want to play some more B-roll of this printer and talk a little bit about myself. Hi there, my name is Garrett, and this is my first ever review on YouTube, so I really appreciate you watching this. A little bit about me is that I really like 3D printing, if you couldn't tell already. I also love technology, I love space, I love traveling, and I love videography, and I thought this is a really cool way to bring some of those interests together and do something really cool. Because this is my first YouTube video, I have basically zero following. So if you like this video, I would really appreciate it if you considered liking or subscribing and maybe sharing it with a friend. Also, my fiancée and I decided to put our heads together and design our first 3D printed product. And those are cool sets of coasters. But they're different than the coasters that you've seen. Let me explain. Here's one of our sets of coasters. This is the Constellation Collection. As you can see, you've got the Big Dipper, Cassiopeia, Orion's Belt, and Cygnus. But what's unique about these coasters is the customizable nature of them. Let me explain again. Let's say you bought our Geometric Honeybee coaster, but you also really like our Constellation Collection. Well, you don't have to buy a whole new set. You can actually just buy the replaceable inserts. By simply popping out the insert, you can swap out the relatively thin and less expensive design for a different design. To keep all your coasters looking fresh, customize them for the different seasons or different moods for the day, whatever you want. And we want to make a lot of these different designs. We're really excited about these, so if you went to take a look at it, it would be greatly appreciated. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.